Hey, Toronto. Welcome to the How's the Market podcast. I'm Kate. We've got Dave here.
Good to see everyone.
We are two members of the Dubbin Associates team. Not sure who that guy is. And
That's me, right?
I think that's you.
Okay, I hope so.
And we've got a special guest here, Erik Lamy.
Thank you. I'm Erik. I'm a mortgage agent here in Toronto. I work out of the Mortgage Scout office at High Park. We are powered by DLC's Dominion Lending Centers. So I work for Mortgage Scout. I'm an agent. I work under two brokers there, Darren and Hercules.
How do I get a mortgage? I just call you.
Well,
what do I need? Do I need a blood sample?
Oh, well, we'll take everything nowadays. Every year it seems to get more complicated.
Your mother's DNA, your
Mother's
firstborn
DNA.
child.
Mother's maiden name.
Yeah, can I get your date of birth, your SIN number, and your first dog's name?
I wish that was a joke, but I think that's where we're headed.
So let's talk about your first time buyers because they're not really sure where to go. And then people who have been through or maybe down the property ladder and they're on their sort of second or third or fourth property.
Learned their lesson that they probably should figure out the financing before falling in love with the property.
I guess for folks that stay at the property for longer,
Right.
If they're there for 10 years, they probably talk to you a little bit more frequently because of the forced renewal with the terms.
Exactly. I mean, for most people, when they start thinking about buying a house, what do? They go to Realtor.ca or MLS.
They start going to open houses.
They
walk through homes.
Yeah. And they're picking their budget based on typically
the
area they want to live in. That's where they usually start.
They go to some bank website and type in what they make for the year and get an approximate of what they can afford. And they just start going with
by lots of phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they get their pre-approval. And then you wonderful people end up taking them shopping. They fall in love with the property. I mean, it's changed for the most part. I guess people are more educated nowadays, but for a lot of people, that's what they do. So I'll get introduced to them via realtors, via past clients, and they'll tell me that they have a firm offer on a property that they need financing for. and
you're like, hello, first time meeting you.
Nobody's going to lend on that property.
Yeah. Are you working?
Let's say they come to you first or they've spoken with a real estate agent. What kind of information should they be preparing? What should they be focusing on? Obviously, you want to have a great credit score and want to be focused on that. But is there other things that they should be preparing before they come and talk to you?
I mean, whichever one they feel more comfortable with. But obviously, in my case, I prefer if you come see a mortgage agent.
Yeah.
You prefer people to call you. That's amazing.
Yeah. Come see me. Just come on my door. Tell me, perfect income and credit, and we'll get this done. No. But ideally, you talk to somebody that can help you figure out what your actual budget is. Especially living in Toronto now, being a first-time home buyer, we can touch on that now, is very difficult.
Yeah.
You've lived in an area for a certain amount of time, like 15, 20, 25 years. This is where you want to live. Houses, I don't know, in the 90s were $250,000 on that same property is $1.3 million.
Yep.
Now, in your head, you want to live in that area, but until you actually crunch the numbers and actually see what you could afford and also see what all the associated costs are with that mortgage, there's really no point in starting to look for that property.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge step that people overlook is the total cost of acquisition
Yes.
and understanding what that looks like. If you tuned in the last podcast, we talked at length about the different taxes that apply to purchasing here in Toronto. But it's, hey, how much cash do I actually need to have on hand to pay those land transfer taxes, closing costs for lawyers, budgeting for movers, making sure I have enough cash to order a pizza while I'm moving in that day, all that sort of stuff.
And having that money put aside for emergencies, if an appraisal doesn't go through.
I think the trap a lot of people get into with the access to technology now is you jump on the bank's website, or I'm sure Mortgage Scout has a ton of realtors have it, is figuring out what your monthly payment are.
Yep.
So people shop now, okay, what's my monthly spend on buying a car or buying a house? Okay, perfect. But on top of that, I have to understand that there's some additional costs. Like I'm going to have utilities. I'm going to have property taxes. Insurance.
Well, that's why we have real people like Erik to take you through that process.
So that's always been one of the key things.
I always feel like mortgage calculators, they're like the WebMD of the internet. You should just stay away from them because it's never accurate. It doesn't take everything into account.
It gives you some of the truth.
Not the whole truth. Still the same disclosure. It says, please contact a professional before these numbers, right?
Yeah.
100%. It's like how often you go buy a car and you're like, hey, we can get you in this car for this payment of $700. Cool. I maxed out, but then you realize you have to get your insurance.
Yeah.
And then you have to put the gas in the vehicle.
What do you mean it needs gas?
You have to pay for your license or your license plate.
Oh, winter tires. What's that?
Yeah,
no, for sure. Because often I get clients where they come in and they say, we have $100,000 for a down payment. And I'm like, does that include closing costs? And they're like, maybe. you know?
I watched a TV show in the States and they just say you make the seller pay for the closing costs. That works here, right?
That'd be nicer as a buyer, not the seller. But yeah, it's a little bit a different world out there. But yeah, often it could be a make or break, not having the closing costs from the down payment, especially with house prices here. So if you're coming in with 100,000 on $1 million home, all of a sudden your land transfer on that first time home buyer, I don't know, could be $15,000, right? 20,000.
Yeah, you can't do that on $1 million home, right?
No.
Because you need the 20% down.
Oh yeah, as soon as you cross that threshold of 999,000, yes.
Yeah.
As soon as you touch that $1 million mark, there's a minimum 20% down payment required, which now creates a whole other sort of issue for many people.
Yep.
For our listeners that are extremely organized and want to be very prepared, if they're coming to you, what do they need? Like, you need like a job letter, pay stubs, T4s, all that sort of stuff. If you get the dream client that's, hey, thinking about buying my first place, and you're like, okay, here's a list of everything, and they send it over. What's in that list?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, see, they might think they know what they need to send me, but until you know what the actual job is, because that's a whole other ballpark again. If you're a salaried employee, you're going to send me a job letter dated within 30 days, a most recent pay stub. I'd like to know exactly what your down payment is, where that down payment is sitting. So is that in savings, TFSAs, investments? So that's part of it there. When you're buying, that's typically what we're needing right there. Those are the main items. Also bring me up a credit score, a credit bureau that's in good standing.
Yep.
Right? A lot of people actually don't even know. Some people never even had a credit card.
Yep.
So they don't have, it's called a beacon reject, where the score doesn't even pop up and doesn't populate. So they don't even know that, right?
It's better to have bad credit than no credit.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Do they need to bring you proof that they filed taxes the year before?
That depends, right?
Okay.
Typically, when I'm having a conversation with the clients, we start with, if you're a salary, one job letter, pay stub. But again, in the GTA where house prices are going up and incomes are fixed, sometimes we have to access that a 2-year average. If you do receive overtime or you do receive bonus, we can factor that in if we do have 2 years history of your income taxes.
Okay.
If you don't have 2 years, we can still use a job letter and pay stub. However, we're only entitled to use or can only use what's on that job letter.
With higher interest rates the last year, is it made it more difficult for your first time buyers?
Yes, I would say so.
What are some of the workarounds or the house hacks that we're seeing out there? I remember when I first started 10 years ago, is maybe you're getting somebody to be a co-signer, getting that basement apartment, the extra income.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's huge still to this day, right? One of the other questions I ask when I'm meeting with a client is, once I figure out your income, do you have access to a co-signer? Do you have access to maybe extra down payment via gifted funds? Because, in this market, I'm finding my first time home buyers are actually not in their 20s anymore. It's not like back in the day, I guess you can say, where you got your first salary job or your first job, whatever, and then you went and bought a house.
Yep.
Now, a lot of my first time home buyers are in their, early 30s, mid 30s, some in their 40s, and they're still getting co-signers from their parents. They're still getting down payments from their parents. So that's a start, right? It's always good to know that you have access to that, the support from your family. And then the transition for me was always to, if they have a certain area they want to get into, and we're finding that we're pushing limits, is yes, having an apartment in the basement. Yep. If there's another self-contained unit, we're able to use that potential income to help qualify. Ideally, if we're using that income to qualify, you are putting a tenant in there, obviously, because that's the whole point, is to subsidize your costs.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, we can use market rents and use that to qualify higher. Or you can actually, one of the things too, I think is probably going to be big, is buying a property with friends.
Yep.
Sacrifice a little bit.
Yeah, people are still very wary about going into business or to something like that with family and friends. But I think over the next 10 years, we're really going to see that start to develop, and people are going to have to do that in order to stay in the city.
Sure.
It's interesting. There's been talk for, over a decade about how the largest transfer of wealth is coming from baby boomers to the next generations. And I think we're starting to see it in a way that I wasn't really sure we were going to here in the GTA, but it's in the form of a gift letter to buy a property.
Huge.
A lot of the traditional way of thinking of it is going to come through inheritance, through a will or something like that. But now it's a lot of people are taking, whether they have to take a line of credit or take funds, equity out of their place to help get into the housing market.
Absolutely. It's well, I just had a client, I don't get too many details, but the gift ended up being about $500,000. And not all lenders are okay with that, obviously. Using a mortgage broker, we have access to the different lenders where, depending on your specific scenario, we can find a good fit. But that's $500,000 to able to get them into their property. It's,
if you're fortunate enough to receive a gift letter, what do the lenders want to see? That usually that's in the bank account for 90 days, or that you have like a proof of funds. There actually is that letter documenting where the funds are coming from, and that can be supported.
Yeah, for sure.
They want to follow the funds, right?
Yeah, exactly. Again, it depends on the lender. But typically, if the money is deposited into the home buyer's bank account prior to purchasing or 30 days prior to closing, then just the gift letter itself is sufficient. If it's within 30 days of closing, then sometimes the lender will request that the gifter's bank signs a letter saying that the funds are available.
Okay. And I think a lot of first-time homeowners, they don't really understand when they come to you. What is the advantage of coming to you versus coming to their bank that they've had an account with for 10, 15 years and just walking in and talking to a mortgage person there?
A lot of people tend to say, I have my car loan there. I have my banking accounts at the TD Scotia, wherever it is.
Yep.
And their first instinct is just to go there because they want to keep everything together.
Yep.
Again, nowadays with technology, a void check, wherever it comes from, will come out of that same bank account or that same institution. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter. But when you do talk to a mortgage specialist or investment specialist there, often they may not be as knowledgeable as maybe a mortgage broker, but also they only have their product that is sitting there. So whatever's on their shelf at that time is all they have access to. Sometimes some institutions will have really great rental programs, and then they go in there to go a rental property, and then all of a sudden that product's gone.
Yep.
So if they come see a mortgage broker or a mortgage agent, we're able to look at the market and see what lender is offering what product at which time.
Yeah. And is it a fair assumption that person who works at that institution is probably going to be pushing those products a little bit more, not really comparing?
They really only have access to those products. Sometimes you'll see with one of the major banks that they're tied to an alternative lender, that they'll refer business to that bank, and then they'll work together to try and bring maybe those folks, graduate them back to the A lender. When you talk to a mortgage agent like Erik or a broker, they have access to multiple different lenders, and they can match which fits your profile best. We're talking a little bit more about the information you need. So what if you're a salary employee, if you're salary plus commission, if you're 100% commission, if you're self-employed, these are all different variables that can eliminate some lenders, and other lenders have more of an appetite for the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, so if you do go to your own bank and you don't qualify there, they do have access to that alternative or B lender. You might hear that term. Yeah. But again, there's usually only one alternative lender. Yeah. So you have to fit their criteria, right? Yep. And again, just to touch on that person that's sitting in the office at the bank that's helping you, usually I joke about it. I'm not sure if this will make the cut, but essentially that's a very ambitious teller that's moved into that position. And at the end of your 3 or 4 or 5 year term, that person might not be there. So working with a mortgage agent, my job is to follow through the lifetime of your mortgage, and basically always be looking on the at the market to see what is available.
Hey, I'm going to see you every 3 to 5 years. Let's keep in contact.
I'll be in contact with you, every year, just to make sure everything is doing. If I find something that's in the market that'll help you, I'll give you a call. Say, hey, listen, I've done some math. Here's a penalty it's going to cost you to break your mortgage. We can move you to this other institution and save you some interest, right? Okay. But again, to touch on what you're saying, Dave, about the alternative lenders, like when it comes to incomes, most people are fixed incomes. When you're in salary, you're not capped. It's very hard to start pushing over $200,000 or whatever that.
You don't really have that opportunity to make extra income on the side, outside of promotions.
Exactly, right? So, and with house prices going up, this alternative side or alternative lenders, they are more flexible on the debt servicing ratio. So they allow more monthly income to go to monthly debt, which allows you a little bit more buying power. Now, with that comes slightly higher rate. Sometimes there's some fees included. But to get into the market, usually it's just getting into the market that's difficult. Yeah. So that when you are into that market, so you do come see me, we do put you in an alternative lender. It's usually for a 1 to 2 year term. Okay. And like you said, Dave, with the plan of moving back to best rate lender in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
And I forget the terms, but they used to be called so you got your A lenders, which are your major banks. And then there was like A- and B lenders, but it's just all in alternative now.
Yeah, well, and it's subprime, and but subprime's a scary word after what's happened in the U.S. Yeah. Right? So, but it's alternative lenders, right?
Yeah, we rebranded it to alternative.
Yes. Yeah, and if you're someone who's looking for financing your first time home buyer, and these home hacks aren't really working for you, I guess the last option is to sacrifice on what it is you're looking for. Whether it's location, whether it's the size of the home, get that price down into something that's a little bit more affordable.
Or is it just wait and save? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a big believer in a quick no, right? So I usually have an intro call where it's 15 to 20 minutes long. And my goal is to figure out, am I able to help you? Yep. Yes. Cool. Let's go to the next steps. If I'm not, maybe you're close. So you might be only a year, 2 years away with your savings, or 3 is, you're very far away here. And then you might have to start considering moving down the 400 or 401 until you can afford it. Right? Yeah. That seems to be happening with a lot of big centers now, right? Yep. It's just so unaffordable. So,
Especially, yeah, a lot of people just aren't able to make those stress tests right now.
Yeah, and renting is terrible though.
Yeah. A lot of the time you're going to be paying very similar to a mortgage and what you're paying for rent, right? If you're in a 2-bedroom condo, you're north of $3,200 a month.
You know what would be an interesting something to look at? Is it harder to qualify for the mortgage going through that process, or is it harder to secure a rental for the rental application? I bet you the documentation is pretty similar.
Why? There's just so much competition now, right? For the
Yeah,
rental units.
it is an invasive amount of documentation that we need. It's very similar to applying for a mortgage.
I remember before we bought our first house, we decided we were going to move out of our basement apartment and move into a nice main floor. And the questions were obviously the standard ones. What's your income? I need a credit bureau, all that. They're like, what kind of car do you drive? And I'm like, what does that matter?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I just bought an Audi. And I'm like, that's going to be amazing, right? Audi A4. And they're like, man, sorry. We found a better suitable, I'm like dinks, dual income, no kids, no debt, nothing. And I'm like, I don't even know what these landlords are looking for.
Yeah.
And this is 2013.
Oh, they want someone who can afford a $1.5 million house, but they want them to rent out the first floor of their home. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah, but then in the same breath, they'll turn around and go, if you can afford that $1.5 million house, why are you renting?
Yeah.
So it's
that's
like
a red flag.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I want this, but if you meet that criteria, I'm going to suspect there's something up.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then let's chat a little bit about renewals. A lot of renewals coming up for 2024, 2025. It's going to be an interesting time for people who locked in at 1.5%.
Yeah. I did pull some stats from the CMHC's website, the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation, and the numbers are a little scary, I guess you can say. More surprising. But they're expecting, by the end of 2025, that 2.2 million mortgages will renew. So that's about 45% of all Canadian mortgages.
So half the country.
You just went through it?
I just went through it.
Half the country is renewing.
Yeah. So
half the homeowners.
Yep.
I'm trying to do the math in my head. I think my mortgage went up probably over 35%.
Yeah. So that's what it is. About 30 to 40%.
Yeah,
so
it was a rental property, and it's fine, but it's not ideal. But I went with the 1 year to see what's going on.
Sure. Well,
we'll see. Yeah.
I know, but 1 year.
But and I actually we chatted quickly on it. I think I got a decent rate on it, and I was happy, and it works for this year.
I think a lot of people are going to be signing those 1 and 2 years because they're saying there's anywhere from 1 to 2%.
Well, already
rates are expected to go down.
A lot of people are going 1, 2, 3 years, 4, right now, because it's. So again, rates. Where are rates going?
Okay, let's qualify what we say about rates, because a lot of people, I think we've all become very educated over the last 2 years, 3 years about economics and rates, and a lot of people will talk about the Bank of Canada overnight rate, which currently at 5%, and tomorrow we're suspecting they're going to hold.
Yeah, I think they're going to hold
on the 24th. But mortgage rates actually move independent to that. For fixed,
yes.
Variable is always plus or minus whatever. Prime. Yeah. Mortgage, so like your 5-year fixed, or like your 1 year fixed, or 3-year fixed, those are all going to go off of the 5-year bond rate.
Yeah. So they'll go off the bond yield market.
And that goes up and down, forecasting to say, hey, I think this is what's going to happen in the next 5 years.
And off the top of your head, do you know the difference between fixing it at a 1 year versus a 5 year right now? Like just for an average property, I don't know if you want to use $1 million, 500,000.
Well, so let's go under $1 million. But so best rates right now on a 5 year, let's say a purchase. So insured mortgage, meaning less than 20% down payment.
Yep.
We're in about the 5.19% range.
Okay.
But if we asked you last week, it was under 5. You get like 4.99 for some stuff, right?
Yeah. So again, those rates could be a little bit deceiving.
We saw inflation go up a little bit, and
some of those rates you have to be careful, right? Because
it's the what am I signing up for?
Yeah, I'm saying 5.19 is probably the standard.
Yes.
Okay.
5 year fix. But
if you're looking to get like a 1 or 2 year fix, what's a kind of? Are we talking like 1% higher?
Yeah, but over 1%.
Okay.
Over a point. So. It just depends, because all the fixed rate mortgages are price based on the bond yield market.
Yep.
So 1 year bonds are whatever the cost is.
Yep.
They're more expensive than at the moment. So the 1 year fixed mortgage is more expensive.
Yep.
1, 2, and 3 are higher. So 3 and 4 years are coming down, actually, or they were. I saw last week they start ticking up without trying to get into.
There's a lot of
even the head of Bank of Canada can't get it right.
It's going to be funny because hopefully by like 2027, 2028, we're going to be having this opposite discussion with people who locked in at higher rates and are hoping to refinance and maybe get some lower rates. We might be having the opposite discussion.
So here's the thing, right? So right now the renewals, right? So people signed at basically record lows.
Yep.
in 2019, 2020, 2021. Now we're going to be, so an example is here that I wrote down just from the CMHC again website, and it's like a $500,000 mortgage at 1.94. So that's about where the rates were 4 or 5 years ago, like on the low end. Okay. Now they're going to be renewing we're starting at 5.45. So that's a 40% increase, which is $950 a month.
And that's on a $500,000 house. Like, good luck finding that in Toronto.
$500,000 mortgage, not even the house.
Yeah, sorry, $500,000 mortgage. Good luck finding that in Toronto. Like,
so here's the thing, right? So that's the thing. So now people are like, and a lot of people go fixed, and we can have the chat about fixed and variable. There's reasons to go for both. Most mortgage brokers and people in finance, if you talk to them, it's usually variable. And for everybody else, it's typically they want to go fixed because it's safe. Now, a lot of clients that I've had went fixed 5 years ago, and they're going to go fixed again. It is what it is, but they're going to go from that 194 to 5.45. So, it's a jump, and they know that, right? But there's a security in there.
Yeah, I've always gone with fixed. I like, especially if it's an income property, I know what those monthly costs are going to be.
Yeah,
and
find security in that.
It's a known, and I'm fine with that, even knowing that I am, when the variable's less, that I am sacrificing it.
You could be paying more for that security, right?
Well, in the last year, a lot of people say, I told you, right?
Yeah.
But it's
2020
There were some people who got greedy and they didn't want to sign in when we were at record low interest rates. They got a little greedy. They signed variable, and they've been paying attention to these Bank of Canada announcements for the last 3 years.
Yeah. So let's say you are one of the folks who's got your mortgage renewing in the next 2 years. What are some things that you can do to help make that potentially 30, 35, 45% increase more palatable?
I'm not sure. See, so you touched on you having a rental, right? So it was palatable because you have a rental and the rents are able to carry that. Now, for most people, they don't have that.
Yeah.
The rates are the rates. They'll always just be the rates, right? You have to, whatever the rates are in the market. A lot of people, I've had clients who are like, oh, thank you, Eric. You got me the lowest rates again. And often that's just a cycle. It's a timing thing, right? Yeah, we do our best to get you the best rate, but like sometimes it just falls that way. But some people are ruining that renewed in 2023. They renewed in the sixes.
Yep.
What can you do? One of them, depending how long you've owned your property, is you can re-amortize the mortgage, stretch it back out to a 30-year amortization. That can help. But for a lot of people, that's still not a thing. What's
and you're
next?
going to be paying a lot more interest with that over the long term.
Well, yeah.
There's more interest, but that monthly cost comes down.
Can, but some people it won't even, right? Because they've only had the house for a few years.
I guess so, yeah. If you've only been on like a 1 year term.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, or even 5 year, you go, or if you were on 25, push to 30 years, maybe. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, cutting stuff in your budget. Right?
And a lot of people are stressed right now because it's not even just like selling your home is an option for a lot of people right now. And maybe you've seen a little bit of an increase over 2 to 3 years. In a lot of cases, we've seen a decrease for most people who bought when these interest rates were at record low.
And if you bought at record highs and you're trying to break the mortgage, the rates have come down. So penalty calculations will be impacted and they'll be higher, right? If you're breaking a mortgage to go to a higher rate, the bank's okay with that because it's like a restocking fee, right? They get to reinvest higher rate versus if you're breaking the mortgage and the rates are lower, somebody has to pay for that. So it tends to be the homeowner that'll take it on the chin a little bit. So
when you're renewing, most lenders give you the option of paying down a lump sum.
Yeah.
If you have some extra cash, that can help buy down the principal, which means less interest over the next term.
So maybe if you didn't hit up your parents for the down payment, originally the gift letter, maybe that is an option now. Right?
But also hopefully a lot of people, if they didn't max out their budget at these record low interest rates, hopefully they've been keeping their eye on the announcements and what's been happening over the last couple of years and maybe setting aside some money anticipating that renewal coming
But if you're looking at stats, there's basically we're at record high.
Yeah. So hopeful.
Our credit cards are maxed out in Canada.
Exactly. Everything's maxed out, right? And then my card.
When this winning lotto ticket comes in, let me tell you.
Yeah, but that coupled with the cost of living going up so much, is it going to hurt people? What do you think is going to happen? Are we going to see mass amounts of homes come onto the market? Are people going to take it and just adjust?
People are going to do what they have to do, right? At the end of the day, I actually started back 15 years ago in working collections and I had to do mortgage collections. And at some point I tell people, it's not your home. It's not a home anymore. It's a house. You're unable to afford the payments. You're so far behind. It's actually caused you more stress for your family, right? And families are breaking down. At some point, it just becomes a home and you need to sell, right? Yep. So it's not an easy decision, but maybe you make that decision sooner rather than later and walk away with some equity, which then makes it easier for renting for at least a short term.
Yep.
But again,
you get to clear out some debt.
Yeah.
Start
with
over,
anticipation that you might never get back into the
turn a new leaf.
Yeah. And that kind of comes to that sacrificing maybe your moving areas.
Yep, for
So
sure.
I think, did you touch on it earlier about default rates?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw a little clip on headline stating that there's many houses hitting the market under power of sale, and
Yeah.
it's a
Or
meltdown.
I think they're saying it's like up 300%, up 400%, but that's okay. Up from 2 to,
Yeah, that's
like,
I put $100 in crypto, I made 400%, and
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
no, but yeah. So I was just looking at some stats, and these are from the Canadian Bankers Association, and that was as of October, and our default or our power of sale percentage is 0.17 of all mortgages.
Yeah.
So I think Ontario had the highest in defaults, and it's mortgages in default, and is about 2,200 only
Okay.
in Ontario. Canadians do pay their mortgage, right?
Yeah.
And when I talk to clients, always pay your mortgage first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Always pay the mortgage, and then eat.
Yeah.
But like
So-
all other bills can wait, right?
No more Starbucks, right, Dave?
when you yeah,
No more Disney Plus.
when you say defaults, that just mean missing one payment.
Defaults, no, that's arrears. So defaults would actually mean 90 days plus, right?
Okay.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
So if you're 30 days in arrear, 60 days, 90 days, the lender wants to work with you. I guess you're technically in default, but as soon as you go 90 days, that's when in Ontario will start the process, or the lenders will start. I said that because I went back to my collection days. But yeah, they'll start the process, contact the lender, then the lender gets sent out and all that stuff. So it gets more expensive. If you're in Quebec, you go 1 month in arrears or 15 days late payment, and they send letters to lawyers to start the process.
Oh, they're just like, they're not
Well,
having
it's
it.
a little different because in Canada here, or I'm sorry, in Ontario, Canada, Freudian slips.
Yeah, no, Quebec's not part of Canada. What are you
We
talking
will
about?
not be cutting that one out.
As a Frenchman, I'm saying that.
The country of Quebec.
Country of Quebec. But yeah, so what happens here in Ontario, if you go 90 days late, so the lender really wants to work with you
Yep.
to help you make those payments, because if they send a demand letter from a lawyer, so then you then have to pay your 3 months in arrears plus the lawyer fee
Yep.
to get back to date, or else they'll start the process. In Quebec, the lender is responsible for all fees.
Okay.
So that's why they don't mess around. The
okay.
the lenders don't want to have to pay any extra fees, so they just start the process right away and put the pressure on the homeowner to.
That's
make the
good to
payment.
know.
Yeah.
It is good to know. Blame the lawyers.
Blame the lawyers.
Is it like that anywhere else, or is it just primarily Quebec?
I'm pretty sure it's only Quebec. I'm only familiar with Quebec because I worked Ontario, Quebec
Okay.
back then. But I feel like most provinces are more like Ontario.
Okay.
So something interesting we ran into. We recently had a couple buyers looking at power sales, and we're able to secure one for one of them, and got an amazing deal on it. It's not really as advertised as we see like foreclosures, because the difference between foreclosures is the lenders already seized the asset.
Yep.
It's a much more timely process, and now they're liquidating it for pennies on the dollar. But with a power sale, they've taken over control, and now they're selling the asset, and hopefully there's some equity left, and the owner can get paid out on it. What's interesting with a power of sale is the owner actually, right up until the day before it closes, can, as you described, pay out all the arrears, all the and the lawyer's fees, whatever they need to pay out, they can pay it out, and then the deal's canceled.
Even if you have a firm offer.
If you have a firm offer. So I actually saw that one property we were following, we made an offer on it, didn't work. They had another offer come in, and then I saw it was terminated. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, what's going on here? And so I called the agent, and he got back to me. He said, oh yeah, the owner,
Cleared everything out.
settled the bill, and everything's done. So we're off the market.
I'm pretty sure you have till like 11:59 the night before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Like,
so
you
I
have every second
yeah.
possible for you to.
You should see that Schedule B is. It pretty much takes away all your rights except for your right to breathe
Yeah.
as a buyer.
Listen, if you're a buyer looking for a deal right now, I would focus on estate sales.
Yep.
We can do a search. We can get you that sort of stuff. And I always talk about it as it being like grandma's house, Nona's house, where it's probably in immaculate condition, but you step into 1980,
Yeah.
1970s,
Yep.
and some funky looking carpets, some interesting wallpaper.
But a
You know,
house with good bones that's been maintained
Yeah,
for the last
so
30, 40 years.
Right now, a lot of people want the finished product, right? They want that Instagram. Okay, let me do the reels here to brag to my friends.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to take on that type of property, do some work to it.
Yeah.
I think that's where the biggest opportunity is going to be in the next 6 months.
And again, that comes back to that sacrificing, right? You may not get the beautiful house right now. Maybe a lot of the work you have to do
Patience,
yourself.
no instant gratification.
Yeah. Like when my grandparents bought their house, they had strangers living upstairs on the second floor. They had 3 kids crammed into a semi-detached in the beaches. And that was for like 10 years. They did whatever they could to get that mortgage paid and that's when houses, their house, I think they probably paid $80,000 for it. And they still needed those upstairs tenants, like living with one kitchen and the whole family's just living
Sure.
together.
No, absolutely.
People used to do what you had to do, in order to get that done. And now
Well,
people want,
still do that. They still do.
a lot
I
of
did
people
it. Me and
do.
my family did it. We
Yep.
started off, we had our son read, and then we were pregnant again. And my dad's, hey, it's probably time you buy a house. And I'm like, oh. Like, did you see house prices? This is 2014, right? We're looking. And then
condos are $250,000. What are you talking about?
By the way, right? See, looking back,
That's got to be the top of the market. I swear.
Yeah, I'm like, where are we at? The house we're looking at was 640,000. I was like, how in the world?
That Toronto housing bubble, man.
Yeah, that's what we did. So we ended up, it was semi-detached. That was already had 3 kitchens. We put one wall up, became a triplex. We lived in the top floor. We had our second child. We went and had our third child, and our mother-in-law living with us to help babysit.
Yep.
And COVID hit, and we're all stuck in that small little unit.
Yep.
And that was 4 years we did that.
Yep.
In COVID, my shins had enough of hitting the coffee table. There's no room in the house, so we went and moved out, right?
Yep.
So, but yeah, we house hacked. But buying that first house was actually helped us.
You got to get in. You got to start building
the
equity.
First one getting in. We built enough equity to pay off some debt and to pull out, down payment and closing costs for the next property.
Yeah.
Right?
And did you end up keeping that as an investment property?
I did.
So now you've got a portfolio too.
Exactly.
And that first house helped you do that.
Does that make you a land baron if you have 2 properties?
In my mind, it does for sure.
That's why it says it on your business card.
Your wife's the baroness, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty much. But it's funny. Like I make a joke that we started with $70,000. We were able to turn it into 2 properties in 9 years. It's super possible still. But yeah, there is some sacrifice to be made. And also when you touch on those like Nona's house, right? Yeah. Well, not only do you have to have patience to want to do the renos, but you also have to have patience to find a contractor to come do it.
Yep.
But there's programs out there that can help that. But a purchase plus improvement.
Yep.
If you're doing less than $1 million with less than 20% down, you can do the reno or help do a reno, but then it's capped at 40,000. A lot of people like, can I just gut the house and reno it all? And with that program, and the answer is no on the insured less than 20% down payment. But there are programs that will help you at least get that kitchen done or finish a basement if you need it to get a rental in there, right?
And if you're willing to take some time and do it slowly, like room by room, like over the next couple of years, is a HELOC an option as well in terms of reinvesting some funds and renovating it?
HELOC all comes down to equity, right? So if you're putting minimum down payment, then no, because there's no equity to be used. So typically the mortgage and HELOC component can equal 80% of the house's value.
Okay.
So what we saw before 2022, when everything plateaued and started correcting, is you could secure a property, and then probably in 6 months it's gone up significantly. Then where you could maybe get that HELOC and take some out.
Yeah, a lot of clients have done that. So and again, with the higher rates coming, many people are like, oh my God, like we've talked about this before. If you have clients who bought a house 3+ years ago, like they've won the lottery. Yeah, like you have a ton of equity sitting there, and a lot of people, which I've done now, they've accessed that equity through a HELOC to pay off debt, but now they're also now at a point where they're going to have to renew that first component. The HELOC is already at probably 7.2 plus that, so 7.7% they're paying on it. So that pressure is going to start pitching there too, right?
There, to answer the long question is, there's people are feeling it, and if you take on the extra HELOC as well, I just don't think we're going to be flooded with the power of sales that you might get influenced by negative headlines are alluding to, but
as per those stats, it's clear that it's not a total meltdown and a crash, and everybody's.
There are people that do let a property go to power sale because they're just like, okay, I might have a portfolio of properties, and this one's the one that I've got a troubled tenant with, and you know what, like let's just
cut our losses.
Yeah.
There's probably various reasons, right?
There's any number of reasons.
And I think, like you said, looking for estate sales when you're looking for those deals in the market is a really good idea. Obviously, you have to have a bit of time for, you need the estate to secure some documents, and that can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Probate in Ontario is not a fast process. Do you know
anyone that could talk to us about estate sales and how to handle estates?
The Baroness.
The
Baroness might be an expert
there
in
we
that
go.
field.
We look forward to her.
Baroness.
Yes.
You should probably have her on the show.
It'd be great to have her.
Yeah, for sure. She can walk you down that road. That
it is.
It's something.
To touch briefly on it, it's so important to think about having a will in order and think about kind of that transition to do some estate planning, because when you have to deal with things with probate, and it can just prolong everything, and it can be. I've seen homes just be neglected and sit there, and while they're trying to, they're trying to work it out. And
especially if you've got like someone who had 4, 5, 6 kids, and now they're all tied to the estate, and you've got, you don't want to have arguing. You want to make it as clean and simple as possible.
Well, the arguing is, You want to be as prepared as
There's going to
possible
be
for-
arguing.
Yeah,
There's going to be arguing.
absolutely, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd like to think not, but like the one thing that people don't do, and this is,
They don't
talking-
pick a favorite. You got to designate the favorite
Yeah,
kid. That's
we
the
all
way to
have
do
a
it.
favorite, right? But like
You pick the favorite child, they decide everything. Done.
Yeah,
There you
but,
go.
But it's important because a lot of people don't do estate planning.
Yep.
It's hard enough to get your financial planning in order if you don't have two pennies to rub together. But estate planning is super important, especially if you have kids involved, right?
Yep.
If you're a couple and you own a house, it's one thing.
Yeah.
Or even assets go over. But like when you start getting kids and who's going to take care of those kids, if both of you, something happens with both of you, I've heard enough in the house that it's quite scary.
It's a hard conversation.
Yeah.
But it's a necessary conversation.
A lot of people are scared to have it, right?
Yeah.
But what's scarier? If something happens, then you're in it, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so if we want to talk a little bit about rates, we mentioned that the benchmark rate is at 5%.
And of course, Eric, you always have the best rates.
Yes.
Yeah, always. The day that we talk, I have the best rates possible. So I always have to be clear that as of today, I have the best rate, but if rates change.
Eric, for those tuning in on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, are we on TikTok?
The TikToks.
Eric's on TikTok, so they'll see him on TikTok. Now, if people have seen your face before, is it at a local hockey rink?
Yes, it is.
Star of the George Bell boards.
Yeah, I'm in your corner at the penalty box.
Yeah.
I look a little bit different.
Yeah, the puck marks are.
They're not filling in my beard.
No.
I do have some puck marks in the teeth though that make it look. But you'll see my.
We got to get
wonderful
the
mug on
kids
the-
down there with some markers. Fill in.
It's not necessarily kids.
No. When my son plays there, every time he goes by, he gives me a little high stick in the face. When he goes by the penalty box, he slaps you in the face. So
I love
he thinks
that.
it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And all the parents are actually like, they're like, "Oh my God, that's you." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Clark Kent. I put my beard on so nobody recognizes me."
Don't want to get recognized.
If you want to see clean shaven Eric,
Yeah, no,
it's a good opportunity.
It's been a minute.
Sorry, you were telling us you got the best rates.
The best rates always when you do a mortgage at the time.
No
we're
no
talking,
caveats. You
when-
got
the
the
day
best
that we were
rates.
talking, we
Own
have
it.
the best
Say
rates,
it.
but
Say it.
we'll
Own
always-
it.
I always have the best rates.
Eat, pray, love, repeat.
Yeah, exactly. We have benchmark rates at 5%. What is it? Since 2022, it was March 2022. First increase, they did 10.
Wow.
10 increases. If you listen to history, and we hope history repeats, typically rates come down faster than they go up. Some in the industry are thinking they might come down by 2% 2024. Is it possible? I don't know.
Seems ambitious.
I just look at what the Bank of Canada has told us, and nothing seems to match up. So I just don't know anymore.
Yeah.
I look at what they say and I go, okay, that might be wishful thinking, but
They raised rates
I'm
too
very
high.
suspect.
When was it? Summer 2022. They said they're going to keep rates extremely low until end of 2023. So if you had to make any big purchases, this is the time.
Yep.
Well,
Everybody listened, and then
we were wrong. And then again, if you actually remove interest costs and rental costs from inflation, we're at the target rate where they're trying to be, which is 2.5 to 3. So if I had a crystal ball, I can tell you what the rates would be.
Dave's got a crystal ball.
That's why I'm wearing the hat.
Whoa.
That's why I'm wearing the hat.
Just give it a rub.
My comfort blanket. Yeah, it seems like that rates will be coming down this year. We have a rate announcement tomorrow, likely that it's going to hold.
Yep.
Next one, I believe, is March. And then April.
Yeah.
Most people think April will be the one that they budge. Some people are like, they need to start dropping now.
Yeah.
I'm
I
predicting.
think they've missed the
My
boat on it.
prediction's been March. I've been telling everybody I know. I think first 2 quarters is going to be a really important time to look if you're thinking about looking at the market, and you want some selection, you want to have some power, because I do think towards March, April, May, I think we might have the first decrease. And as we saw, when they were increasing rates, it would go up, everything would cool off for about a month, and then people and buyers would get re-engaged and the market would start up, and then it would go up again and everything would cool off. And then as soon as we started seeing holds, the market wasn't. So I'm excited to see what happens when they finally start decreasing those rates. I think it's going to bring in a lot of confidence back into the market.
I think it's going to become painfully obvious how limited supply there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have clients that ask me, they're like, "Do you still get bidding wars?" I'm like, "We're starting to see that,
Dude,
right?"
yeah.
And when the houses are priced properly and they're in decent shape,
Yep.
there's multiple offers.
And I think as we get into that spring summer market, that's the busiest time for leases. A lot of people sign 1-year leases, waiting to see what happens with the market, seeing if they're going to be able to get back in, working on saving up that money. There's going to be a lot of people who their leases are ending and they're starting that process again.
Well, I think that
I don't want to defend your man Tiff, but I think this is what the Bank of Canada is trying to avoid too, is that everyone's watching and on the forecast, we see sometime this year rates are going to come down, and they could come down significantly. depending on who you're talking to and what day of the week and when it is, it changes slightly. But as soon as you start to see them come down, or there's signs that it's going to be coming down very soon, you're going to get that sort of mad rush to the Black Friday sale, right?
Yep.
And that's what they want to avoid.
Absolutely.
They want to make sure that we're doing it so that we can control.
Well, especially.
Are we sure that was the plan?
I think.
Like, if that was the plan, right? Again,
Okay, so let me just say, I'm hopeful they have a plan.
The federal government, they want their multiple land transfer tax.
Oh my God. But yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Erik Lamy is running for office.
I guess
You are bilingual.
I'm bilingual. I can make promises, and then as long as you're allowed to come back on your promises, then maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, the rates are like, people are really waiting for rates to come down.
Yeah.
But like you said, limited supply.
Especially when you look at prices, everyone's talking about how prices are down so much. And
They're
when
not.
you look at it, we're at end of 2021, early 2022. We're very similar to those prices right now. So if they start crazy decreasing rates and
would you
people
say we've
start
had our
coming back
crash
in and we get
already?
multiple
Sorry?
offers.
Like, I think we've had our crash already, right? This
Yeah.
crash that everybody's waiting for. I think it's already happened.
Crash, because it's almost
Adjustment.
20% correction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, it's not going to be.
No, there's not the fire sales where, you know what, here's $1 and I'll take your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
The auctions on the front lawn.
no. If that's in Toronto, there's some other segments of Ontario where there's more pain to be had.
Yep.
For sure. But one of my questions when I assess rental properties in areas is always, what's the local industry? What's the major, what's coming in? So
Why do people want to live here?
yeah. So why are people living here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for a lot of markets like Toronto. It's buy Toronto.
Yep.
Buy
To
house in
find-
Toronto and hold,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, when you're getting out the outskirts of smaller communities, that's for
Yeah.
sure, right?
Yeah.
Are there universities there? Are there major industry there? Because that is always a sign that there'll be a strong rental.
And even just looking at things like the city's developing, like looking at where the new GO train line is going to go, we're probably going to see a lot of those properties running along those lines increase in value over the next, how long is it going to take?
Yeah.
Yonge and Eglinton took, 14 years? And we're seeing some improvements, so maybe the next 15 years.
I have a new future policy. I do not comment on Eglinton.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw, they started taking the construction down at the Yonge and Eglinton
Finally.
intersection. The construction is down
I was
there.
at Dufferin and Eglinton for a long time.
Yeah.
And that corner's finally cleared up and it's nice.
Yep.
Yeah,
For now.
it's still a weird corner though.
For now.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked a lot about interest rates and we've talked a little bit about supply, but let's talk about demand. So we've seen increased number of people joining us here in Canada through immigration. And one of the areas of that we've seen in the headlines recently was international students. And I think earlier, maybe about a week or so ago, we saw articles come out that the federal government was warned about monitoring immigration and the impact it's going to have on housing and prices. And then just yesterday or earlier this week, we saw them put a cap on the number of international students coming in.
I think they were aware that there should have been warnings about how many just
I was
in
gonna say,
general
if
Canadian.
anyone has been on
Canadian,
any
No,
Instagram post or Facebook post with news related, every single comment is just
TikTok's
like,
been saying that.
immigration, it's too high. We got to cut. Like the people
Yeah.
have known this. If you live in a city center, we know that it's too much
We
right
need
now.
the immigration, but I mean, if you have the immigration at the numbers we've had the last couple of years, but without a plan of,
we need to build more. Like if we're not building, the math isn't mathing.
We
like,
need infrastructure.
yes, we need to start building, have jobs for the new to Canada to
Yeah.
help build.
Yeah.
But those warnings have been out for a while. But as for the students, you brought that up to my attention. And is it the students that are the problem?
No, students are looking for an opportunity.
and they are paying for it.
Yeah, it's a significantly higher price that they're
I think
paying for.
You're paying like anywhere from 3 to 5 times what a Canadian is paying for the exact same education if you're an international student.
I'm pretty sure, because I think we're subsidized, right? So I think it ends up being the same cost, but
No, but there are fees. Like
Yeah.
it could be like $20,000 to $30,000.
Yeah, and not only that, they have to have X amount of money in their savings, $20,000, whatever it is.
Plus, then they have to find housing. They don't have the option to just live with their parents and stay local, right?
Yeah.
Like they have to find some kind of housing for the next 2 to 4 years.
So that's where we get to where the impact on
It all
housing.
comes back around.
Did they say exactly what why they're putting a cap on the students? Is it because
It was like a
Housing's a big pressure point for it.
Yeah, housing's always is a huge pressure point, but it was a workaround for people to get in.
Yeah.
Is to go and sign up for one of these private colleges, and you might sign up for the year and you get your work permit, and then you can go find another
With a
job.
student visa, you're allowed to
Yeah,
work.
so you go and you can go work somewhere else, and they removed the number of hours, limiting it, and so it was a workaround to get into the country.
It's
And
interesting.
so now we're saying, okay, we have an issue with the number of places for people to live. Maybe we should look at how many people are actually
But I like
allowed
how
to
they
take
put
this.
it just on students, right?
Yeah.
Like, could it just be like, hey, let's just limit the number of people?
And we're having record high immigration levels for the next
crazy.
2 years.
No, but we don't want you to look at that part of it.
They're saying they're putting a cap on students. So that's like their quick fix to say we're doing something
Yeah.
to limit and try and maybe relieve pressure off the housing market. Is that kind of thing that's similar to, I think it's similar to the vacant housing tax, right?
Or the foreign buyer ban.
The foreign buyer ban. It's not the foreign buyers that are.
It's such a small percentage, right?
Yeah, well, especially when you factor in all the exemptions.
And also, if you're capping students who aren't even able, maybe their parents have money back home. I know a lot of times foreign buyers will buy condos or buy property for their kids while they're here as an investment cycle, somewhere for them to live while they're in school. They haven't been able to do that for the last year, and they're not able to do that this year. But now we're also capping students. And
Well, how about they maybe, I know I'm always a believer as a landlord that maybe the landlord rules might be a little too strict, right? Because I know of people that have properties that just don't want to rent.
hey, I don't know if
There's
you
a
want to
lot-
open up Pandora's box right now.
but no, but you know, it is
Yep.
like very similar, right? There's like they're like, let's make it more difficult on landlords to whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that causes
Yeah,
more
yeah.
demand because
Yeah.
less units are on the market.
It's a push and pull. It's like you want to
gotta be
protect
fair,
tenants, but
for
you got to
sure.
protect
100%.
landlords as well. And
100%,
it's gotta
but
be even.
That's why we were joking earlier about applying for a mortgage and applying for a rental, because landlords look at it and they say, if I let you rent from me and you're a bad actor, you really want to try and take advantage of the system for the first 6 months to, it could be a year.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to deal with that.
Like legitimately, one bad tenant can ruin someone's life.
It
Oh,
has.
Like if you
There's
can't pay
stories
your
about
mortgage with these record high interest rates, if you can't get them out, if you're forced to sell, you could be taking like someone's kid's college tuition and now they've got to foreclose on their entire home.
But
Like
I think,
it's
I think we should maybe clarify that yes, there are bad actors.
yeah,
There's bad actors on both sides. And
exactly, absolutely.
But like when I work with clients to help them buy investment properties,
Yeah.
right? Like access the equity to buy an investment property. Yes, there's going to be some bad actors. Now, if you get stuck with one of those terrible bad actors,
Yeah.
yes, there's people that have had issues because it takes so long to process them through the system, right? It's like a year. I know the government has put some money into that to try to free that up, but you know, for the most part, tenants are just so happy to find an apartment that they're like, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
I mean, over time might be not ideal for you because you want maybe, you know, the rents go up and expenses go up. But at the same time, these tenants know that it's too hard to get an apartment, so they don't want to leave.
Yeah, the stress is being felt on limited number of supply all over.
Sure.
And, you know, with increased taxes and cost of building, we've seen less homes being built. So we're already at a deficit in number of homes and
For last year.
available.
Yeah. And there was a huge
We're
article
building-
about Ford not hitting his target numbers for new builds in Ontario.
Well, they have to give back
Provincial-
the green space, so
Yeah.
there's no room to
So-
build.
We don't, to start off, we don't have enough homes.
Right.
Yep.
We're building less homes.
And then last
And
year
we're
we
adding
didn't hit
more
our
people.
goal of building the minimum that we're supposed to build. We actually fell
So,
behind.
so you're building less homes and you're adding more people.
And the cost
to
of
a
building
situation
is
that was
up.
already had too few homes.
Yep.
When you do the math, it doesn't work out.
The math isn't mathing.
Yeah, that's
But yeah,
There-
also
there you
like
go.
cost of materials are going up, cost of labor is going up, the price of homes is currently going down.
it was like in World War. They had the same problems, and then they went and started building a lot of rental units, 8-plexes and 4-plexes, like the 90s, right?
Yeah.
What happened? The demand was met because the government just built.
Yeah. And Dave had a really good point on our last podcast. He was talking about how we've got a ton of purpose rentals being built and opening up and having tenants coming in, but none of those are rent controlled.
Yeah.
So, you might have a ton of people
So now-
cycling out of those buildings.
Now you have the one tier that the rent control applies to, and then the other one that doesn't. It's all under this umbrella of the landlord tenant
like-
taxes.
It's just a bunch of layers put on top of layers. And
Yeah.
they're confused of what layer was put there for which reason. It's just
But coming back to the international student cap, so I think they're capping it at 360,000 students, which is about 35% down from 2023. They've said that there's going to be a bigger restriction on areas where the growth is really unsustainable. So I would imagine in some of the larger cities, maybe they're talking about, but across Canada, they said the ban could be anywhere, like they could reduce it by up to 50%.
Sounds to me like they're talking about Toronto.
Yeah, that sounds.
is there going to be a police force put together to prevent people from coming back? You know, I mean, in theory,
I don't know how
it
it's going to
looks
be
good, right?
enforced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine
They
it's going to
already
be
do
on.
that, right? They already say, I'm going to be moving to Sudbury or
Well, here's the thing. I
Winnipeg," and then they
imagine
get there,
it's-
they're like, nope. I'm
Yeah, and
coming
they
back.
decide to move. I imagine it's going to be for future applications.
For sure.
But again, you're right. It's like, how do you hold the students to that? How do you hold people to that?
I think they'll probably look more towards the institutions.
Yeah.
To try and monitor it, but
Yeah,
Who
and the other
knows?
issue, it's not just housing. Housing is a component of it. It's a pressure point, but it's
Yeah.
not just that. It's also the quality of education that these students are
Mhm.
getting.
Yeah.
The federal government has decided that these it's mainly private campuses, but they're underfunded, they're under-resourced. They don't, they're taking in more students than they can actually properly educate, and they're charging them insane amounts of money, and they're just not getting the right education, whether it's not safe, whether it's not the right education, but they're just underperforming. They're not
A lot
living
of
up
these
to
are
the
actually
promises
online,
they've
right?
made.
They're doing 1-year online courses.
Yeah, some of
For
them
a
are
lot of them.
online. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I did read an article about
Yeah.
that where
Yeah.
one of the colleges, their intake grew by 300 and some percent.
Yep.
And it's all 1-year online courses.
Yeah, but
that
they don't
most-
have enough teachers. They don't
Yeah.
have enough supplies. They
That
don't
hurts.
have the space. They're trying to get our standards back on track as well, because a lot of people choose to come to Canada for education, and we don't want to lose that quality education that we're giving to other people. And right now, it seems like we're not meeting that. We've also had a lot of back and forth. The federal government, the provincial government playing the blame game, where Trudeau is saying education is a provincial matter. They should have been doing something already. They should have been on top of this. They should be making the rules. And then the provinces are going back and saying, you actually approved all of these student applications. That came from you. You're the only one with the power to do that. So a lot of back and forth and
At
blaming.
least there's consistency on blaming the other person.
Yeah. At least they're both messing up equally.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
Politics. I wish you luck, Eric.
Yeah, I think I've decided I'm already out.
No,
I'm in?
we've
Okay.
got the posters printed.
And if you want to reach out to Eric, we're also going to have that information down below. You can just click to book an appointment with him. He's a really fantastic friend of the team, friend of the brokerage, and we appreciate you coming in and sharing a little bit of your knowledge.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, can
I won't
we
say that. It was a lot of fun.
can we get you to commit to coming back?
I think I'd come back. Yes.
Yeah.
I think
Eric's
so.
going to come
That's
down after.
prefer maybe.
Yeah.
Sure, maybe.
Yeah, third rate decrease. We'll
Yeah,
get him
'cause
back
then-
on.
for sure. Because then,
And it's going to be a whole new world.
But won't you be too busy then?
I'll make time.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us. If you have any comments or questions for Eric, please leave them in the comments below. We will get him to respond to some of them and
Absolutely.
share some of his wisdom.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody.